So in mathematical logic, we first start with the very basic thing which gives kind of the gives away the structure of mathematics. So obviously here also, much like verbal logic, the first term that is interest that we're interested is called statements. So statements, which are they? So they are statements. So they are declarative. So this statements are very different from sentences that we learn in English grammar. Okay, and that difference is very important because that difference also tells you, how you will approach the solutions given a problem of logic. So they are declarative and meaningful string. They are declarative and meaningful strings of symbols or sentences sentences that can be classified, and this is the important part, that can be classified as being true or false. Okay, now when we are saying that it can be classified as being true or false, we are not interested in the fact that it is speaking about. Okay, it's not really that we are interested in. All right, we are much more interested in the fact that it cannot be both. So that is something that we are much more interested in, that it cannot be both. So that excludes almost all these sentences that we use every day. All right, and that's why when we write something in mathematics, it becomes to us it feels so alien. Anyways, so the fact that it cannot be both, this is called the principle of excluded middle. This is called the principle of excluded middle. Okay, so for example, can we write this? If I write, say, Priyanka Chopra is beautiful, this sentence, whatever you may feel about it, this does not belong to logic. Okay, so this does not belong to logic. This is not a statement. This is not a statement. Why? Because this principle of excluded middle, it doesn't work here really. All right, so this is the kind of statements that we are not looking at. It is beyond our purview. Okay, so now, given that, we will refer back to some of the simple mathematical works that you have done in preschool or school, much like 1 plus 1 equal to 2 or 2 plus 1 equal to 3. These are called tautologies. Okay, these are called tautologies. Tautologies means, as we know, always true. All right. So obviously there will be another group which are falsities. Falsities are statements uh, you know, on which you generally used to get 0 in mathematics. So if you write 20 minus 7 is equal to 12, that will be a falsity, right? So it's like when you are getting marks in mathematics, it is because you are writing tautologies or because you are logically deriving, you are deriving the sentences or something, or string of symbols which are mathematically true. And the places where you are deducted marks because you are writing falsities in the sense that it cannot be derived logically or it is always false. Okay. So there are two things that you have to keep in mind. So that's why I always said that when you are solving a problem, the important part is to get the first sentence correctly. Because beyond that, everything is a logical derivation, either logical derivation or the some tautologies. Okay. So that's how it works. But the important point is that there is no idea of being both. Okay. Now we have our idea of logically equivalent. So equivalence means we need at least two sentences. So we take P and Q. All right. So what this means? It means if P is true exactly when Q is true. And the symbol for that is P triple equality Q, which we generally used or probably you have used earlier to denote identities. So for example, whenever we wrote identities, you have written this symbol. Identities are certainly different from equalities in the sense that identities are basically all the formulas that you know, all right, and they are true for all the variables concerned or all values of variables, whereas equality is something which holds for very specific values of a variable. All right, so if I write x equal to 5, this is very different from writing x logically equivalent to y. Okay. All right. So now obviously we are interested, given P and Q, we are interested in constructing new sentences. If you want to have a comparative study, or you want to use some kind of transfer learning, you can always open up set theory and study it because you will observe the direct resemblance or the direct similarity between these two in terms of symbols or writing. Essentially, mathematical logic is the foundation of the entire mathematics that you have done. Anyways, so ways of forming new statements. So first thing that we have is negation. So negation of some statement P, which is denoted by not P, or we also write this not P. This also means not P. Okay. And what does it mean? It means not P is true when P is false. Again, you must understand that the principle of excluded middle is at work here, because in everyday sentences, this is not always, this is something that not always holds. So if P is false, in our everyday statements, sentences, it is not the fact that not P will be true. But since here there is no case of middle, if P is false, then obviously not P is true. Essentially, they are the same thing. Okay. Or you can also write that, so because of that, you can also write that when not P is false, when P is true. Okay. And that brings us to the principle of double negation, which we have used very much when we wrote that minus minus is plus. That's a direct application of the principle of double negation, which, to put it simple word, which is basically this: P is equal to not P. If you want to understand in your preschool terms, so what it basically says is minus minus is plus. Okay. Then comes conjunction. So conjunction is basically, we write it as P and Q. Okay, P and Q. And there is also a symbol for this. This symbol is P and Q. Okay. What this means is that this is true when both P and Q are true, and is false otherwise. That means if any of P or P and Q is false, then P and Q is false. Okay, if only one of them is false, then P and Q is false. And this has a direct connection to the notation A intersection B. So we include that element which belongs to both A and B. Belonging to only one of them doesn't qualify. Okay. And obviously, here you have a small rule, which again you have seen in set theory, which is P and Q is logically equivalent to Q and P. All right. After conjunction, we must have something called disjunction. We have disjunction. And disjunction is basically P or Q, which again is written as P, and this is the symbol of or and Q. Okay. And we will write like this: it is false when both are false. It is false when both are false. So if we negate this statement, it basically means it is true. It is true when both will be negated and it will become at least one of them. So it is true when at least one of them is true. So this is basically another way of writing, or not another way of writing, this directly connects to A union B. So if the element belongs to at least one of them, it will belong to the union. Okay. And if some element is not a member of A union B, it means it belongs to none of them. All right. So there actually in set theory, the true false statement, if we say, it will be X belongs to A and X belongs to B. So those are the statements in terms of logic in set theory. So if for X, if X belongs to A is true or X belongs to B is true, it will belong to A union B. And when both are false, that is, both of them are incorrect, it will obviously not belong to A union B. So that's how logic connects to set theory. And beyond that, connecting beyond set theory is very simple. Okay. So here also, we have this rule, which is basically commutativity. So here also we have this rule that P or Q is logically equivalent to Q or P. And we also have De Morgan's law here. You know the set theory counterpart of that law, which says that union of the complements is the complement of the intersections. So here, in terms of logic, we will write it. So complement will become negation here, and union is or, intersection is and. So complement of will start with and, so that is intersection. So complement of intersection is equal to union of the complements. So we take the complements and then take union. Similarly, union of the, negative, that is complement of the union becomes intersection of the complement. So if I try to read in terms of logic, this will become not and, not and becomes not of ors. Okay, now these two statements, they also teach us a very important thing, and that important thing is how to deal with negation. So you can look at these two equivalents or ecological equivalents. You can look at these two equivalents as two laws. You can look at them also as the logical counterpart of De Morgan's law that you learned in set theory. Also, you can look at how to use negation symbol. So how does it work? If when the negation enters the bracket, and becomes or becomes and. That's how it works. Okay. And this is precisely how negation will work always, that when it enters inside a statement, okay, enters the parts of the statement, then if there is any operation inside it, it will change to sort of its complement. All right. So and becomes or becomes and. Okay. All right. Then we come to the most popular and heavily used form, which is called implications. So implications, or we can write conditional statement. So this is basically statement of any problem that you face in mathematics or any theorem that you have studied. They all belong to conditional statement category. They are all implications. Okay. So for example, if it is a triangle in Euclidean geometry, and if you are looking for the sum of the angles, then it will become 180 degrees. So that's an implication where you are saying that if it is an Euclidean triangle, then the sum of the angles will become 180 degree. Okay, all right. All right. So there are three notations for that. One is this, and sometimes I have seen people using this symbol instead of equality. Note that that is entirely wrong. Equality means very different thing from this, which is, if I try to write in English, will be read as P implies Q, and it can be also written as the way I have stated the theorem, that is, if P then Q. And we have our way of identifying in the statement if P then Q which one is the necessary and which one is the sufficient. Okay. But for the time being, we learn something else. So P is called the hypothesis. Remember this hypothesis, this term hypothesis is used in the exactly same meaning with which we write the word hypothesis in statistics. Okay. So when you have written hypothesis in hypothesis testing, the word meant the very same thing that it means here. So P is hypothesis. So when you are writing when you are inferring something, or when you are writing your inference in statistics, you are essentially writing a statement like this, where P is the hypothesis and obviously Q is the conclusion. But statistics has a very different way of going from P to Q. Those ways are the statistical methods that you learn. That's it. Okay. All right. Now we'll look at some of the rules. So number one is something that we probably know, that P implies Q is false. P implies Q is false only when P is true and Q is false. In all other cases, P implies Q is true. Now, this is a rule. This is a rule that we have devised ourselves. That is, it's a rule of logic. Okay, that's how we treat it. That P implies Q is false when P is true and Q is false. Otherwise, P implies Q is true. Now, given apart from P implies Q, P is true and Q is false, we have three cases which will be categorized as P is true and Q is true, and the other one is P is false. Okay, and it ends there. Why? Because technically speaking, if P is false, then whether Q is true or false, that we cannot really determine. Okay, so that's the truth of it, that we actually cannot determine whether Q is true or false. So what we say there is that if P is false, then Q is always true, in the sense that there is a very interesting statement that a false hypothesis, or a statement, a false hypothesis can imply anything, and that's the problem. A false hypothesis can imply anything. Now you can probably understand the reason why, if there is a fallacy, or there is a problem in the middle of a derivation, and even after that you get the answer right, okay, you get 0. It's not because mathematics doesn't allow any mistake in the middle. That's what you have been told. The fact is that if you made a mistake in the middle, then whatever you have written can be written, that is true, but I can also write something else, and somebody else can also write something else, because if you have made a mistake, that means you have written a false hypothesis, and that false hypothesis can mean anything. It's not that whatever you have written is only true, everything else is true. All right, so you have basically changed the nature of the problem that you are given to solve. Obviously, for that, changing the nature of the problem is not the idea. So obviously, you know you can't be given any credit. But the fact is that a false hypothesis can imply anything. There is a very famous statement which says that it is logically true. It is logically true that if 2 into 2 is equal to 5, then ghosts exist. Okay, try to understand this. This is logically true. It doesn't matter whether they are actually true or not, but logically, yes, it can be said, because 2 cross 2 is not equal to 5, so it's a false. And a false statement can imply anything. Okay. Then again, we are not really interested in this, really. We are far more interested when it is true. All right, so P implies Q, so this I can take as rule 2. So P implies Q is logically equivalent to not P, not then P and not Q. Okay, I'll write it again. Not P and not Q. Okay, and why they are logically equivalent? It's not because you can really derive this one from this one. You know that, given our understandings, we cannot really derive this one from this one. So why they are logically equivalent? They are so okay. Okay, so they are logically equivalent because the statement on the right hand side is false only when P is true and Q is false. Only when P is true and Q is false, and it is true in all other cases. Okay. So it is because P implies Q's character, logical character, is matching with the logical character of this one, they become logically equivalent. All right. It's not because this can be derived from this. It's because the true false character remains identical. Again, coming from this one, we can also say that P implies Q is logically equivalent to not P or Q. Okay. So for this one also, this thing happens that when this statement is false only when P is true but Q is false. Okay. Now, using the symbology of that we just constructed, we are going to look at several other things which we have encountered again in verbal logic. Okay. So for example, contrapositive. This is something that we use many a times to prove something, not only theorem, but also in exercises. We use contrapositive statements to prove the given statement or given implication. Okay, so what does it say? It says that P implies Q is logically equivalent to not P, or we'll write like this, not P implies not Q. Okay, not P implies not Q. So this one is the contrapositive. This one is the contrapositive of P implies Q. Okay, and as I said that this is a quite useful tool to prove something. Then comes converse, and converse of a statement is not logically equivalent. So we cannot write in this manner. We'll write the converse of P implies Q is Q implies P. Okay, and they do not mean the same thing. Here they mean the same thing. Here they do not. All right. So when they do not, then basically, typically, mathematically speaking, if we want to clarify, we want to say we will clarify like this. So that basically means when P implies Q is true, we have two cases. Q implies P is true or false, right? So from that we have another situation or another forming way of forming statement, that is double implication. Double implication, or we call it biconditional, but there is a very famous and less complicated name for this. We call them if and if and only if condition. So how does that work? So with P implies Q, if I can write P implies Q and Q implies P, then it will be equivalent to P if and only if Q, or we can also write, I mean, that's not logical equivalent, it's just a different notation, P double implication Q. Okay. So to write it in English, we'll write like this. Like this, that P double implies Q is true precisely when P and Q are both true. P and Q are both true or both false, and this is important, that both false. Even when both false, then also it is true. And although it may look a little bit absurd, but you have used this argument of P being false hundreds of times in set theory whenever you have worked with this null set. Okay. So null set works in the world of vacuous satisfaction or in the world where your hypothesis itself is false. So it is from that you have devised rules such as union of null sets is a null set. All right. Okay, now we will go to quantifiers. And to understand them, we'll proceed through examples. And then we'll learn again how to negate statements with quantifiers. So now, as we have stated that, every problem that you face in mathematics is also a mathematical statement, right? So we are going to start with these two statements. So we'll write for any integer x square equal to 1, and we'll write there exists an integer x such that x square equal to 1. Okay. Now, it is trivial that this one is false and this one is true, because there exists an integer which is x equal to 1 or minus 1 for which this is true, which tells me that other than x equal to 1 or minus 1, it will not hold. So for any integer x, no, that will not work. All right. So that means what we just did is we used quantifiers. And it is not x square equal to 1. It is the quantifiers used that categorized the first one as false and the second one as true, right? So we have seen there exists such an x or for all x hundreds of times in mathematics. And even not only that, one of the easy example from statistics will be we write binomial distribution, PMF of binomial distribution, then we write where x equal to 1 to n integers, right? So that's quantifying things, right? Or in normal distribution, it's a minus infinity less than x less than infinity. So in that, or okay. Anyways, so in the first one, so if I look at the first statement, so here we are getting back those quantifiers that we have studied in verbal logic also, right? Now we can see how that works in mathematics. So the first statement says for any, which also says, in other words, for every, and we have a symbol for that, and that symbol is this, which is read as for all. Now this quantifier, this is a universal quantifier. This is a universal quantifier making a statement about all integers. And that's how it becomes a universal quantifier. The second one, here we will call it by a different name. We'll call it a existential quantifier. The name is quite heavy, but its meaning is quite simple. So this is called an existential quantifier, and we have already used the symbol there exists, right? And this existential quantifier, I love this name. It makes it so difficult, but it's not. Anyways, so this quantifier is making a statement about at least one integer. Right? Now, this innocent quantifiers are not as innocent as this look. So we have one rule, and that rule is order of appearance. Is it correct? Or A? Order of appearance of quantifiers matter. Okay. So let us write something. Again, we'll have two statements so that we can get a little bit confused. So statement one is, for all x, there exists y such that x plus y equal to 0. And statement two is slightly different. So there exists y for all x such that x plus y is 0. So we have used the two quantifiers, and together we have said that the order of appearance matters, which is a different way of saying that these two statements are different. Our job is very simple. Our job is to find which one of them is true and which one of them is false. If you feel confused, then an easy way of finding that is try to write each of these statements in English words and then see which one is true or false. But trying directly is always more fun. So the first one, it says for all x there exists a y such that x plus y equal to 0. And this one says there exists a y such that, so there exists a unique y such that it will work for this one, which says that it will work for all x such that x plus y equal to 0. But obviously, there is no unique y which will work for all x. But for all x, if I pick up one x among these x's, then I will find there exists an y for that x. There exists a y for that x such that x plus y equal to 0. And for all x, I will find such a y. So this one is logically true. And for that, we have x equal to minus y. However, this one is false. And this means nothing. Since this is false, we cannot actually write anything else. Okay, so this gives us a teaching and the sort of an unsaid rule regarding this order of appearance and symbols. And the rule goes like this. If several variables appear in a mathematical expression, if several variables appear in a mathematical expression with quantifiers, the values of the later variables, later variable which comes after it, should be assumed to depend on all of the values of the variables, that are mentioned earlier. Now you can better understand why the second one is false, right? Because on all of the values of the variable, now there exists a y, but no, there exists at least, obviously there exists y means there is at least one y, but you couldn't find even one y, which will work for all x. So later variable should be assumed to depend on all of the values of the variables which comes earlier. All right. Now we will look at again something important. Once DSE used to ask a lot of questions based on what we are going to learn now, and that is how to negate a statement, involving quantifiers. Okay. Now this learning also kind of encompasses, or it covers, the way we try to disprove something. Okay. So the way of disproving something, given as a problem of mathematics, disproving essentially means basically going for a negation. And that is what we are typically learning. But the examples that we'll take, those will be logical statements, much like we have written just now. Okay. Because sometimes we really, sometimes we do not really know how to disprove a given statement, or how to disprove the contrapositive of a statement or converse of a statement, and we struggle unnecessarily. Okay, so we have dealt with two quantifiers basically. One is universal and one is existential. All right. So number one is to show that it is false, to show that it is false that every element x, which in other words we are saying for all x, that every element x in some set have a certain property, let's say A, certain property A, it is enough to produce a single counter example, Okay. All right. Okay. So you take a simple example and just show that. Okay. So single counter example. Counter example means you take an example satisfying satisfying the premise that is given to you, and then you show that it doesn't belong to the set. That's what you do. Okay, so that's a way of disproving statements involving for all x. All right. The second one is a little bit difficult actually, to show that it is false that there exists an element y in some set, again, in some set that satisfies a certain property A, we need to show that every element y, that every y in the set fails to have that property. Okay. Now, what it tells in terms of quantifier is basically this. False, so false means essentially negation of truth, right? Or not true, truth, or in this context, we can say that the given statement, if you are considering the false of that means the negation of that. So what does false means? False means that for all x, from this idea of for all x, you are going to a single counter example, which means there exists a x. Okay. Okay. So what it basically tells you that falsity connects for all x, converts for all x to a single counter example, that is there exist. And again, it works the other way around also, that is falsity for there exist goes for every y, that is for all x. So essentially what it means is that if I try to negate a statement involving quantifiers, it will go to the other one. For example, earlier we saw that negation takes and to or to and. Here negation takes for all x to there exists to for all. This rule, it is we always have problems involving this one. So for example, if I give a wrong function, or if I give a wrong function and say, if I say to disprove something, then you construct an example and you show that okay, it doesn't work. But to prove something, but here to negate a there exists statement, you actually need a proof. Okay, that is to show that every y in the set fails to have that property. This requires proving a theorem. So obviously in exams you don't get to do this, because that actually asks you to prove a theorem, which obviously no one will ask you unless you have studied the theorem itself. But from this one, questions always comes, because for this one you just have to construct an example by yourself and to show that okay, given the premise, the example shows that it will not work. Okay, so now we'll take two logical statements. First of all, we'll concise this in terms of symbol, so that we have to remember a little less things. So what one says is that not for all, not for all x property A is basically, it becomes there exists x not A. Okay, so the negation goes to the statement itself. And the second one said that not there exists A is equivalent to for all x there exists not A. If you open now the verbal logic segment, then you will see that we have written the same thing, but in English words. So we have to, we kind of consumed a huge space. That's it, nothing more than that. All right, so now we'll take a statement and we'll try doing that. So this statement that we have taken earlier, that for all x there exists a y such that x plus y equal to true 0. So this was true, right? Now we are not interested in true basically. Now we are interested in something else. We are interested in not. So if I consider a negation now, then what will happen? For all x will become there exist. So in the next line, there exists x, and the not will go after that. So there exists y, x plus y equal to 0. Then the not will go a step, so it will become for all y, and then not x plus y equal to 0, and then it will become x plus y not equal to 0. So there exists an x such that for all y, x plus y not equal to 0. So obviously this one is also false. So there is not even a single x which will work for all y such that x plus y not equal to 0. All right. And why it is so? because you can find one easy example where you will see that x plus y will become 0. Okay, so two things are there that we learn. Number one is this is how negation works. Number two is the trivial thing that you have negated a true statement, so the result has become false. Now, if we look at the ordering, it's very simple, right? It goes one by one by one. So now we'll take the serial statement, which was false, which was there exists y, sorry, such that for all x, x plus y equal to 0. And if we negate this one, now we can do it in one line. So it will become for all y, it will become there exists an x, and this will become x plus y not equal to 0. So given a y, or for all y, you'll be able to find an x such that summing them up will not become 0. Yeah, that's true. So again, from false, it changed to a true statement. Okay. Now we'll try a slightly difficult problem. So we'll write an English sentence and we'll first try to construct it using quantifier, and then obviously the simpler work that will negate it. So the English statement goes like this. So the statement goes like this. Remember the rule of dependence. So for every delta strictly greater than 0, the interval minus delta plus delta contains a point Now you have to name the point in order to write it. So you can consider x or y or something that I'm telling you. A point belonging to the set A. Now, as an English statement, this is fine. But to convert it in a mathematical statement, you need to assign a variable for this one, a point, right? And you will face problems where you have to assign certain notations just to help you out, or just to make you able to write the statement in a mathematical manner. We have done this earlier also in some problems. Okay, so here also you have to do that. So you can take, the choices are like x, y, or z, anything you can choose to write, and then you convert it to a statement, mathematical statement, keeping in mind the dependence, because that dependence will decide the order of the quantifier that you are going to use. Okay. So if I convert it, this one, it will become for all delta greater than 0. So a point, let's take x, a point. So there exists an x belonging, so the interval contains this. The interval contains a point belonging to this. So this part comes within the interval. That means it is inside it. So this will come first, and then this one. So if I negate it, for all becomes there exists. There exists becomes for all. And the last one becomes a simple negation. Okay.